Truck tires overview, leaf spring overview, shocks, airbags. There's different things you can do to your truck. When you're going to put a truck camper on a half-ton truck, very, very important to do tires and suspension. People will spend thousands of dollars on a truck, $50,000 for a new truck and $20,000 or $30,000 on a camper. And they miss the most important part. They skimp on the suspension. Having the proper tires for your truck and having the proper suspension is the most important thing you can do for the drivability and safety and handling. So on the rear suspension of a pickup truck, there's usually 2 or 3 different versions of suspension that are on modern day trucks. The most common one would be leaf springs, just this right here, steel leaf springs that have been around since trucks were built probably. The most common suspension you'll see on a pickup truck is leaf springs, steel leaf springs on the rear, and usually coil springs on the front with a strut. Super important when you're carrying a heavy camper. A lot of the half-ton trucks and the smaller trucks these days don't have a very big payload capacity. They're designed to ride well, like drive smooth, not be real bumpy. So when you are going to put anywhere from 1,000 pounds to 2,000 pounds of camper back there with food, gear, water, you're going to need to do a suspension upgrade. Whether you're replacing your rear leaf pack or you're adding a rear leaf spring or 2, you'll need to do that to carry the extra camper weight. If you don't do that, your truck's going to be doing a wheelie basically. It's going to squat in the back from the camper weight, and the front end will be a little bit light. So a different version of a suspension upgrade would be an add-a-leaf. So we don't have a truck sitting here, but if you can imagine your truck leaf springs and adding 1 more or 2 more leaf springs to it. There's different brands, SuperSprings, Hellwig, Dakar, Old Man Emu, many, many different versions out there. They all basically do the same thing. Some of them install differently. If customers are going to do an add-a-leaf or adding rear leaf springs, most customers, if they're carrying a truck camper, will get something like this, but they'll get the double version. There's 2 of these that they'll add in there. Just stiffens it up a little bit better for carrying the weight of a truck camper. But SuperSprings is one brand. They use a shackle on the ends. This bolt comes out. It's probably tightened down here right now, but this bolt would come out. This middle bracket would come out. You put it over your leaf springs, put this back together, tighten it down. So you're adding a leaf to your existing springs in the truck. The most common way, and probably the better way to upgrade, is take your truck into a suspension shop, leaf spring shop that can rework your leaf springs or add in a new leaf pack for the proper weight and the proper height. These are kind of a generic off-the-shelf, doesn't always do the trick, does help a little bit, but having a shop get it dialed in for the proper ride height and the proper amount of springs added in to carry the truck camper weight is pretty important. On the rear you have shocks. These shocks don't help with your payload, but they do help with drivability and ride. So if you're on bumpy roads or curvy roads, what that shock is doing is just smoothing out the ride and dampening the bumps in the road so you don't feel them as much. The rear leaf springs are carrying the weight. Your tires are your lifeline between the road and your truck. And kind of like shoes, you got to have good shoes, you have to have good tires. And then the shocks just make it more of a comfortable ride. In addition to that, you can add airbags, which this truck does not have airbags on it. Airbags are supplemental, so they're in addition to adding to your rear leaf pack typically. And they would go in usually in place of this. An airbag system would be an inflatable air bladder that goes in between the truck frame and the truck axle, bolted into place, a couple of air lines, and you can inflate them anywhere from 10 psi to as much as like 60 psi. This is one brand of a few versions of airbags, but airbags are just a helper spring. I really don't call it a spring, but that's what they're calling them. I call it more of a helper. It's an airbag. So you have your leaf springs on the truck, or if you happen to have a Dodge Ram 1500, you have coil springs, which are a little bit different, but most trucks on the market have leaf springs. Airbags are just a supplemental leveling system, smooths out the ride of the truck a little bit. You can raise the truck and lower the truck depending on the air pressure in your airbags. It makes a big difference to keep the truck level, keep your suspension alignment in good position, and definitely helps the way the truck drives. So whether you're upgrading your leaf pack, which is usually like priority number one, and adding airbags as a secondary assist, and then upgrading tires. Great, all top things you can do to have the truck drive and ride very nice when you have your camper on. So covering truck tires, super important. Most half-ton trucks, Tacomas, Ford Ranger, Toyota Tundra, Chevy 1500, like all of your half-ton, mid-sized trucks, short bed trucks, typically come with passenger tires, what they would call a C-rated tire, but you're not going to find that rating on the tire. It's just a passenger tire. To carry the weight of a truck camper, it's very important to have the right tire on there. A lot of people don't understand the importance of having a heavier duty tire, not necessarily a different tread pattern and not necessarily a big off-road tire, but having stiffer sidewalls in the truck tire to carry the camper weight safely. Tires are built and rated different weight capacities. So a stock tire that comes on a new half-ton pickup truck, usually just a passenger tire. But if you're going to load up a camper and food, gear, water, people, anywhere from 1,000 pounds to 2,000 pounds of extra payload in your truck bed, we usually recommend upgrading to an E-rated tire. Any tire store will have that. Anything from Costco to Les Schwab tires, Big O tires, Tire Rack, any of your major tire shops carry E-rated tires in stock. If you have a 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck, they come standard. The stock tire that comes on a 3/4 ton or 1 ton is already an E-rated tire. Super important. You'll like the handleability and also a much safer tire to have on there.